Hello everyone and welcome back to another deck guide, this time featuring the magical Magistus and the, well, also magical Witchcrafters. We're doing Master Duel this time. Mainly that's because we got the new support for these archetypes here first and I wanted to play around with it. These are both spellcaster based archetypes, with Magistus focused on equipping their own monsters to themselves for benefit, and the Witchcrafters focused on discarding and recurring spell cards. They also have a couple of bridges since they're from the same group of lore decks, including the brand new and incredibly powerful Lacrima of Light here. So, if locking the opponent out of their extra deck while protecting your own monsters sounds fun to you, let's get started. Starting with our monsters, the low-level Witchcrafters all have the same ability to tribute themselves, discard a spell, and summon any other Witchcrafter from deck. There's no big long combos here, we just get our boss monsters straight up. Each of them also then has an effect to banish from grave for some other benefit. Jenny can banish a Witchcrafter spell along with herself to copy its effect. Note that this still considers itself Jenny's card effect, which means you can use the same spell twice in a row, which is dope, and it also ignores costs and conditions, which is very relevant. Maxi is Maxi, and then Pottery can banish to add back a witchy spell from grave to hand, but only if our hand is empty. That's okay because we go through our hand quickly in this deck, and this is just one of our ways to refuel. Shmieta is then the most important of the little Witchcrafters because she can banish to send any other Witchcrafter card from deck to grave to give us access to whatever else we need. Hain is our first big Witchcrafter. She protects other spellcasters from targeting and can discard a spell to destroy a card on field. Simple but effective, and we always want her on our end board. Next up is Madame Vare, who has some weird effects. She can discard a spell to negate all of the opponent's face-up monsters until the end of turn, which is pretty cracked, but she can also reveal spells in hand during damage calc to give a spellcaster 1,000 attack per spell. Since the hand is hidden knowledge, we can often just blow the opponent out of the water with an unexpected and unrespondable 2,000 to 3,000 attack boost. Lastly, for our big witches is Aruru. Aruru is just as tricky as Vare, and acts as an archetypal hand trap. If the opponent targets your spellcaster for an effect, or an attack, you can summon her out and bounce a card either from their field or a Witchcrafter spell from your grave to your hand, so you can either recycle or disrupt. She also bounces back to hand every opponent's standby phase, so you can use her for your turn to attack and such, then she just pops back to be a hand trap again, which is pretty neat. Onto the spells, you've probably noticed that we play a ton of them. That's to make sure we always have discard fodder for the Witchcrafter bodies. That's why we play mostly board breakers and very few hand traps, with the exceptions of Maxi and Lancea. This is a Malice Tier 0 format after all, and we have to prepare as best as we can. But for the Witchcrafter specific spells, we start with Creation. All of the Witchcrafter spells return from grave to hand on your end phase if they weren't used for their primary effect that turn. That's how we can discard a bunch and not actually run out of gas. Creation's main effect, so not the recursion, but the main effect is to search any Witchcrafter monster, which just acts as a starter. Confusion Confession is our archetypal fusion. It's our archetypal polymerization. It's pretty generic. We only have one extra deck boss monster for the Witchcrafter engine, but it is a very, very important one. You can also just use this for anything as long as you're using one Witchcrafter's material, so it's fine even if we already have Vice Madam on the board. Then, lastly, we play one By Street, which is a little bit different. It's a continuous spell that protects your Witchcrafters from being destroyed once per turn. Combined with Hain, this can make our witches very, very hard to out, especially if you have some spells in hand to reveal for Vare. Instead of returning to hand on end phase like all of the other spells, though, this one activates straight from the yard, which is pretty dope. And you can send it for any effect that would normally require a discard. So you can use it as anything else, but it's always active and protecting you. So, for example, you can wait for them to try and destroy something and then send it for cost after that when it's no longer useful to you. It's just a good, versatile card that we, at some point in our combo, always try to send to the yard so that we have access to it. Now let's talk about the Magistus side of the main deck. Zoroa here is the core of their entire strategy. He's a tuner, which is important since our biggest boss is a level 8 synchro. He can also equip a Magistus you control, including himself, with a Magistus extra deck monster. Then, if he becomes equipped, say by his own effect, you can special summon a level 4 spellcaster from hand or grave. That can be Shmieta as an example, which sets up our important Synchro all on his own. Then we play one Riliona. I've been playing with the idea of having 3. She's very good, but we have a lot of normal summons already, and we can summon her straight from deck pretty easily. She, when summoned, will add a Magistus spell trap to hand, or you can put back a banished spellcaster to the graveyard to use them again. Importantly, you can banish her from grave to equip a Magistus in grave to a Magistus on the field. That probably sounds a little bit funky, but it's incredibly useful. As a whole, Magistus is a little hard to envision what you're trying to do, and you might have to just see some of our combos to actually understand it. Next up, we have 3 of the new Spoon. I guess they went with Spenta in English, but I prefer Spoon anyways. So Spoon can discard to add any Magistus monster, giving us redundancy that this deck previously sorely lacked. Or less importantly, you can discard it not as a quick effect, sadly, to have a monster's attack until end of turn. You can also banish them to equip a monster straight from the extra deck, which is very, very important. Lastly, we play one Crowley. Crowley's kind of a poplar. If you add him to hand, you can special summon. Then, when he is normal or special summoned, you can fusion summon a Magistus or an invoked monster, and he counts as Alistair for that fusion. That lets us play Mechaba for the extra negate alongside all of our Magistus fusions. We have less spells for Magistus, but we still have a few. Mostly they're searchable one-ofs. Magistus Invocation sees play as a searchable, flexible polymerization that we can use for any of our fusions. It specializes, however, in summoning the Magistus ones, and if you're doing so, it lets you use monsters in the spell trap zone as material. That's one payoff of equipping a bunch of our monsters. Next up, we play one Vritra, which again sees one searchable copy, but it reborns a low-level Magistus and then can banish from grave to protect your back row equipped Magistus cards. Then we have the most important spell in the deck, and technically it's for both of the archetypes. That's going to be Ver Magic Lacrima of Light. This counts as a Magistus and a Witchcrafter spell, and is our main bridge and has 2 very, very powerful effects. First up, if you have a Magistus or a Witchcrafter on field, you can send any spell or any spell caster from deck to grave. That gives us access to the Witchcrafter engine, sure, but it can also do some funny out-of-engine things. The only one of those that we're doing is Metalfoe's Fusion. We can send it or discard it off a Witchcrafter, then shuffle it back in to draw a card. The more important effect of Lacrima is that if your opponent activates any card or effect, you can respond by summoning any Magistus or Witchcrafter name from deck. The timing's a little bit weird, but you can kind of think of it like using Called By on a hand trap, if that helps. Also, remember when I said Jenny ignores costs and conditions earlier? That means you can use her effect to copy the special summon free of charge, even if the opponent doesn't activate an effect, and just get immediate access to the Magistus engine. The best part is that since each effect is a once per turn on this card, it's not uncommon to use it 3 times in a turn, both of its main effects and then Jenny as well. As I mentioned, the rest of the main deck is mostly board breakers, with the exception of Karma Cannon as a thrust target if we get interrupted going first. We don't really like playing other traps just because we need the discard fodder and we can only discard spells, unlike something like White Forest, which can do spells or traps. In the extra deck, we start with another payoff for our equipped monsters, Chirozzo. He's a level 4 tuner that you can make by sending monsters from the back row to the yard, and has a battle protection effect that just continues the trend of protecting our board from various angles. Garura is an ultimate Slayer target that draws us a card. Iwas is a solid disruption, being able to quick effect turn into an equip spell and steal an opponent's monster. Whatever it's equipped to can't activate its effects, but passive abilities remain in effect, and it gives them 1,000 bonus attack for the trouble. Vice Madam is the main payoff for the entire Witchcrafter engine and a truly insane card. She has 3 effects, and you can use each once per turn. You get to use one each time a spellcaster effect or a spell itself is activated. The effects are a non-targeting destruction, a summon of a low-level Witchcrafter from hand or deck, and adding back a Witchcrafter spell from grave. And you get to do all three every single turn, yours and the opponent's. The earlier we can make Madam, the better, and our win rate skyrockets if we open Confusion Confession and the materials to use it. The rest of the deck is Slayer targets and the Magistus stuff. Verathrana is our new fusion that can equip opponent's monsters or cards in our yard to itself, and can send Magistus cards, mostly our equips, to negate monster effects and destroy a card on the field. Those are decoupled, you don't have to destroy what you negated, so it can be 2 disruptions. Invoked Magistus Omega is another new fusion that is quite useful going second, since it banishes from field when summoned, and if destroyed you can summon a spellcaster from deck and equip this to it for 1000 attack boost. That just gives us a bunch of value going second, multiple effects, you get to summon a starter, fun stuff. Mechaba is a staple invoked card and can be made with Crowley and lets us discard cards to negate effects. Varam almost never wants to be summoned, but if it's equipped, it makes the monster unable to be destroyed by spells and traps. It also lets the equipped monster pop the opponent's monster during damage steps, so you can almost always get over big guys. If you do for some reason decide to summon it, it wipes the opponent's board when it is destroyed, so you can ram it into something big and demand an answer. This is also our Slayer target for synchros. We don't really have space for them along because the extra deck's already really tight. Synchro Zoroa is our biggest Magistus payoff. When summoned, he can equip a monster from the extra deck to himself. While he's in grave, he can pop a Magistus card on field to summon himself back. But most important is that second paragraph of text. While he's out, the opponent cannot activate monster effects of the same type as Magistus monsters in your back row. So if you equip a Link, the opponent gets no Link effects. Equip a Synchro, Tenpai cries, etc. We normally lock out 2 to 3 extra deck types and sometimes can do all 4. Then Ninaruru is another one that you want to equip and rarely actually use. She gives the equipped monster an extra attack and can pop back row. If you do choose to make her, you can detach a material to add back a spellcaster from grave, which is okay because it just lets you recycle them, but normally there's better things you can do with 2 materials. Riliona is much more useful as an actual monster, letting you summon a Magistus straight from deck, but be aware that this is the only lock in the entire deck, and it locks you into Magistus for the rest of the turn. Aggregator is a Slayer target that lets us negate. Artemis is what you want to equip to main deck Zoroa, and it lets you search a Magistus monster once per turn when she's equipped, say Crowley to special summon himself for free, infuse, or do extra materials, things like that. Her only monster effect is to equip herself whenever you summon a different Magistus. They really don't want you to actually have to use her as a monster. Lastly, Ferajit is a Slayer target that lets us filter a card. You can use Bucephalus to send Garura instead if you want, but I just haven't bothered crafting him yet for the very minor benefit that gives. That's it for the deck. You're probably a little bit confused as to how it all works, so let's go see it in action. Okay, so for combos we're back in Omega just because there's no good way to manufacture a hand in Master Duel, and keep in mind as we go that this deck has incredibly flexible combo lines, and whatever your starting hand of 5 is going to vastly change the lines that you're going to want to do. But that's enough of that, let's get started. So we're going to normal summon Zoroa and use his effect to equip an Artemis, then Artemis can search a Spoon. Then we can use the Spoon to search our Crowley. Crowley special summons himself, but we're not going to use the fusion this time just because we're low on materials. Instead, we're going to use Spoon to equip another Artemis so that we can make a Chiroza with our 2 backline and use 2 of our 4s to go into Riliona to summon main deck Riliona, which can add Ver Magic. We can then use Ver Magic to bin Jenny, and then Jenny to copy Ver Magic's other effect to summon Shmieta. Then we can take a pit stop going into Zoroa from the extra deck to equip one of the card types that we want to have negated. I'm doing Link and Xyz for both of these examples just because that is Ryziel and Malice. That's what you're going to fight in Master Duel most of the time right now. Anyways, so then we can use Shmieta to ditch a spell in our hand to summon Hane to get the targeting protection, then banish her to put Bystreet in the grave so it can come back on end phase. Then we use Riliona to equip the Artemis from Graveyard. By Street comes back. So this gives us lockdown on Xyz and Lynx, which is great right now. By Street protects Hane from a destruction effect. Hane protects the other two from targeting, and we can send By Street for a pop. So this is extra deck lock on the two most relevant types, and a pop and some protection, which is not too bad for 1.5. And then for our second combo, this one is Witchcrafter based. You can do this with either Jenny or Shmieta, so we've got 8 copies that can do this combo, but you do need 2 spells to discard. So we're going to go ahead and normal summon our Jenny, discard a spell to summon Shmieta. If you start with Shmieta, you summon Jenny here, you just want both in the grave. Then we can go into Hane, and then we can use Shmieta to dump Bear Magic, then Jenny to use Bear Magic to get us into Zoroa. Zoroa can then equip himself with Artemis, grab the spoon, use the spoon, get Crowley, summon the Crowley, not fusing with him just because we don't have a whole ton of materials. You can if you have extras. Spoon to make another Artemis, go into Chorozo, same as last time to this point, but we're going to grab a different card. We're going to grab Invocation here. So this is one of the big points that splits what your combo is doing. We've already done the Bear Magic thing, so now we're going to see what Invocation can do. So now we can go into Extra Deck Zoroa, equip one of the types that we want to negate, equip the other type that we want to negate from the graveyard, use Invocation using one of the types from the back row. It doesn't really matter because you're going to get it back anyways, as well as our spent Xyz monster to go into the other Extra Deck Zoroa. Extra Deck Zoroa then equips back the card that was used for its fusion from the grave, and so we still have both locked down, but this time, in addition to our pop, we don't have the extra protection, and we can't actually use Hane's Destruction, but the new Zoroa is a negate and destruction, so we get a negate instead of some protection, but otherwise it is pretty much the same board. Since we're trying something new anyways, I figured I'd just include a couple of games with this one instead of making a separate video, considering I made the videos faster in general lately. I don't know if we'll keep doing this forever, but I wanted to try it this time. So first game, we are up against basically Dragoon Turbo. It's just like a going second board breaker deck that tries to set up Dragoon, hoping that the board's simplified enough that you lose. And we've got a pretty good hand, and they have Valor. Valor can sometimes be good enough against us. We do have a lot of normal summons. Here it is absolutely not enough. So, Riliona gets Valored. We can discard Spoon to add Crowley. Crowley special summons himself out. And then we can Xyz summon our, Extra Deck Riliona. Extra Deck Riliona can detach a material. It does lock us into Magistus, but that gets us Zoroa. So then Zoroa can equip Artemis. And because we actually used a 4, we can use that first effect of main deck Zoroa. You don't get to do that in the combos I showed, but, you know, like I said, it's a very flexible combo line that this deck has. Anyways, we can make Chorozo, go into Zoroa, equip. I don't know what we're playing against. I just kind of try to lock as many things as possible. We managed to do everything besides Fusion, and then I used the Creation in hand to add a Ruru, which can bounce something if they target one of our cards. Doesn't end up mattering. We have Lancea, so I feel pretty good. They try to bait something out before they go ahead and just break our entire board in one. So Harpy's Feather Duster goes, takes care of our locks. Then Raigeki goes, takes care of everything on the field. Thankfully, they're not playing like Tenpai, in which case we just die here. They're just summoning a Dragoon, setting a couple of cards. I don't know why they set 2 here. I was debating if this was a bot. It doesn't really feel like a bot. It didn't while I was playing it, but I don't know why they wouldn't keep a card in hand to discard. It's weird. Especially because we have so much follow-up. We still had 5 cards in hand, and then we do have some graveyard effects. So we just Zoroa, equip an Artemis. The fact that if they had saved a card to discard, I think we were still perfectly fine, but it just made it really easy that they didn't. You see there the effect to just pop an equip spell to bring back our Calamity from Grave, which is pretty cool. We actually make a Ninaruru here for recursion, Fun fact, Crowley doesn't have to be added from deck. It just has to be added to your hand. So if you add it from grave back to hand, it still special summons itself, and then it can still fuse. And it doesn't need to fuse using itself. So we just use a couple of things, go into Big Zoroa, equip Varam, and then we banish to equip Iwas to get the 1,000 attacks so that we can actually get over. Frustratingly, this deck has a lot of 2,900 attack monsters, so 3,000 is a little bit to clear. Iwas helps us with that. So there you go. We got Veilered, we got our whole board broken. They set up a Dragoon. We just have enough recursion and value going on to just not care. Alright, and this one's a little bit of a more traditional game. They're playing, as far as I can tell, like Kashtira Horus. I guess I should check their deck to see if there's anything else in there, but it looks like it's mostly Kashtira Horus. There's probably Fiendsmith or something. Let's get started. We're going first. We've got a bunch of stuff to discard. We have a Ver Magic in hand, which is dope. Don't end up using anything, so we can just go. We have the materials assembled to get a pretty early fusion on board, which is super, super useful. You'll see how crazy we can go. It looks like we're out of resources already, but just having Vice Madam out gets us so much. So we banish Shmieta, which can send something to grave, and then we summon a Shmieta because we still have a spell in hand and we haven't actually used her effect to summon from deck. That lets Vice Madam add another card back, and then we can summon out our Hane from the deck. We can add back Lacrima of Light and set it to use the effect on the opponent's turn to summon something. We add back Shmieta, and then we can set the buy street that we sent off of Shmieta's banishment effect. So we're, it's a Witchcrafter board. This is pretty standard, but you're going to see that we can do quite a bit on this board. So first thing they do is Pressured Planet. We don't want them to get Kashtira going, so we Vice Madam that. Next thing they do is Walls of the Imperial Tomb. Walls of the Imperial Tomb takes multiple cards to actually get the engine rolling, so we let them grab the Imseti and put something back. Let them discard for Imseti. Unfortunately, they have another Horse card in hand. It's fine. King Sark, we pop the King Sark immediately so they can't get extra value off of what they're doing. They do have 2 bodies on board, and they are going to keep their field spell, so they do get to make one big rank 8 XEs. But hopefully at this point we've cut them off of most things. We use the buy street as cost, we add the buy street back, we sent a Jenny. Interestingly, because of just how we sequenced everything, we can use the Jenny to summon out Madame Vare. We use the Ver Magic here because we don't need to do anything to the Lacrima of Light, or to the vampire, the zombie vampire, so we just respond to it by summoning a Crowley, which can then fusion summon with itself and the Shmieta in our hand. That lets us go into Iwas. Iwas lets us steal something. If they were to try and make something scary, we can just say no. That's kind of the whole idea here. They're doing stuff. They got Zombie Vampire, which means that they have access to a bunch of resources, and they recognize that whatever they summon we're going to take, so they go Psychic and Punisher. Okay, cool. That's kind of brutal. We use the Iwas to take the Lancea because that results in Iwas being destroyed instead of banished. They play it correctly, they go to battle, they gain a bunch of attack, but they don't attack this turn because otherwise we might get low enough life. We swap out on end phase into Madame Vare because at this point I have a plan. The idea with Psychic and Punisher is you win if you can get your life lower than the opponent's. That's going to be very difficult because it's going to gain another 5,000 attack on our battle phase, which means we have to have something with greater than 5,500 attack to survive and remove the Psychic and Punisher. But I see a line. We have Vera on board, we have 2,700 on Vice Madam. That means we just need 3 spells in hand and we can get her to 57 during battle phase. That means we can survive this with 200 attack as long as absolutely nothing else goes wrong. Or 200 life points. Now that we have 200 life points, they're not getting below us again, so we can deal with the Psychic End Punisher. We have follow-up. I'm just worried about them having a burn effect, but I guess they don't have it, or they just don't think they can get to something to kill us, so they scoop it up. That's how you deal with Psychic End Punisher. I play enough of it to know. Most people do not figure out a line to it, but it's cool that we can make something so big that a 2-turn Punisher is not lethal. Cool, cool. And we're back with some quick closing thoughts on the deck. So I've kind of always liked both of these archetypes. Vice Madam is one of my favorite cards in the game. She is so much value. But you have to play Witchcrafters, and Witchcrafters is considered a pretty bad engine just because you have to basically discard your whole hand to do anything. I don't know, I've had a lot of games where it's fine because it is a control deck, and you are able to recur resources. It's the same as playing Branded. Like, yeah, you use everything in your hand to get to a point that doesn't look that impressive, but if you manage to hold out, everything starts coming back and everything pulls together to make you just unstoppable by the time turn 3 rolls around. Kinda, Magistus has always been weird. It's almost a combo deck, but not really, and it's almost control, but they don't have that much recursion. But what they're really good at is just locking people out of the extra deck, and that's funny. That's a thing I enjoy doing. I play a lot of Dogmatica for the same reason. Like, so you kind of get the resource recursion coupled with just sometimes winning on the back of a major floodgate in this deck, which is pretty cool. As far as how it's been performing, it's been going okay. It's, even with all the breakers, here's my biggest problem with this deck. And it's not the deck itself. It's Malice. Malice can have their entire board broken, and this has happened multiple times with me, and you destroy everything, you go to battle, you swing for a couple of thousands of points of damage, and then you go to main phase 2, and it's like, cool, I have a negate on the board, your board is clear, this should be a simplified board state, and then you look and see that they have 8 cards in hand. I don't know why they thought it okay that Malice can just garner a ton of advantage as you're breaking their board to the point where it's just insurmountable. As a combo deck, too, like, they're not even a control deck, they're a combo deck. They shouldn't be able to get that much advantage. Oh well, that's the biggest problem, is just that it's not Malice, and even with a bunch of board breakers, Malice doesn't care unless you can kill them on the same turn, because their recursion and their value generation is insane. So, no, this is not going to be the best deck, and you can beat Malice, I have, especially going first, just equipping Zoroa with an Artemis and saying, okay, cool, try to play the game now. They can't. Like, they just don't have ways to deal with that. And that's pretty funny. But, you know, even with all the breakers, we don't do the best going second into Malice. Everything else we can kind of deal with and pop their boards and simplify the board state, and we do well in a simplified board state, especially if you can make a Mechaba or a Varathrana, just because that gives you a negate every turn, which is cool. But anyways, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you liked it, and I hope to see you next time. Please get excited, because I'm going to start doing dude decks next week, and there are so many I am excited for. Bye-bye.